worship you. Yeah, I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God.
Hey guys, welcome back to Center of Hope. Tonight is a special night because this is the series finale of sins that are okay as long as you love Jesus. Week 1, we talked about fear. Week 2, we talked about focusing on the wrong things. Week 3, we talked about comparison. Week 4, we talked about lying. Week 5, we talked about forsaking prayer. And week 6, we talked about judging others. And last week, for week 7, we talked about holding a grudge. Tonight, I want to jump right into the text. And I'm going to introduce tonight's sin as we go along. So in John chapter 13, we're in the Message. Starting in the very first verse, this is what we see. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his dear companions, he continued to love them right to the end. It was supper time. The devil, by now, had Judas, the son of Simon the Iscariot, firmly in his grip, all set for the betrayal. Jesus knew that the Father had put him in complete charge of everything, and that he came from God and was on his way back to God. So Jesus got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron. Now, there's an interaction that Jesus and Peter have that I would typically love to discuss, but because of time's sake and to keep it relevant, we're not going to actually talk about that tonight. So we're going to skip on down. It says, after Jesus had finished washing their feet, he took his robe, he put it back on, and went back to his place at the table. Then Jesus said, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You address me as teacher and master, and rightly so, because that is what I am. So if I, the master and teacher, washed your feet, you must now wash each other's feet. I've laid down a pattern for you. What I've done, you do. I'm only pointing out the obvious." My grandmother and I have went round and round about this very particular passage since I started really understanding hermeneutics and the meaning behind scriptures in the Bible. She is what I would like to call a literal reader or a literal thinker. She will read the Bible or hear someone read the Bible to her, and what it says, it means, and that's all there is to it. But the problem is the Bible is filled with literal statements and metaphorical statements. Now, this illustration that we see here, Jesus puts on an apron and washes the disciples' feet. This is a literal example of a metaphorical principle, serving others. A good example of something Jesus said to do literally is the observance of the Lord's Supper or the Passover feast, as someone call them, or most commonly referred to as communion. You take a wafer and you have some sort of grape juice or wine that you use, and those you eat and drink in remembrance of him and his sacrifice. It's literal. That's something that Jesus said to do, and he meant to do it just like that. Not imagining his body when you sit down to the breakfast table with a biscuit and a glass of orange juice. It's meant to be a sacrament. It's meant to be observed with reverence and be sacred. When I was a child growing up, I used to go over to this same grandmother's house. And when I was there, some of my cousins would come over, and I wasn't allowed to partake in communion as a child. My parents would not let me. But when I would go to Mama's house, me and my cousins, we would have our own communion and feet washing service in the backyard. I kid you not, what I would do, I would run in the house, I'd get a slice of white bread and a plate, and I'd smash that puppy flat and tear it into little tiny pieces. And then she had two juice options available to us. That was prune juice and orange juice. So we chose the best option of the two, grabbed us some orange juice, got us our wafers, and ran to the backyard, and here we are sitting there downing white bread, chugging some orange juice, and then to beat all, when it came time to wash the feet, we just decided to skip the part of touching each other, and we just took the water hose and sprayed each other real good. That's how we did communion and feet washing in the backyard. Now, that's not how I would typically do things if I was observing communion today, but young Billy, that's how he did it, and he had it going on, if I can say so myself. Now, people like my grandmother, Jesus is talking about washing feet, and they consider that to be a religious sacrament, a command that the saints have to practice every single time. But that's the problem. Washing feet is not a sacrament. I have participated in many feet washing services throughout my life. I've been in some great moments, and I absolutely love those services. There's nothing wrong with participating and practicing the washing of the saints' feet, as they might say in some of your more old school or traditional churches. But to call it a sacrament, it's not at all what he's saying here. What Jesus is saying is, if I, in all of my glory, am willing to do the dirtiest job in the room, you should be willing to do the same. That's what it really boils down to. This is the culture that they were in. They'd go to someone's house, they would be greeted by the host, and they would wash the feet of the guests to get the dust off. They're walking around with sandals all day long. Their feet are dirty, and to keep from tracking the house up, they wash the feet. Now, Jesus doing this was something more important than playing host, because by this point, I heard one preacher say it this way: buddy, supper's over. They've done tracked the whole house up by the time dinner's done. This wasn't about playing host. This was about him teaching his disciples and teaching followers like me and you that we have to be serving other people. That is the call of the Christian, to serve others. In today's culture, we don't have that scenario. We don't go to somebody's house, kick our shoes and socks off, and plop them down in a basin of water. We have nice shoes, we have good socks, we have pavement, so we don't have that same kind of scenario with dirty feet whenever we walk into the room. So here's Jesus. He's saying, not if you want to be like me, wash feet. What he's saying is, if you want to be like me, serve others. Jesus wants us to be willing to do the job that no one wants to do. In the Bible, there are two types of sin. One type is the sin of commission. Now, in the sin of commission, it's things that you're doing, like lying, cheating, stealing, and things like that. But then there are things called sins of omission. Those are things that you didn't do, like not praying, not trusting, or in this case, not serving others. And that's the sin that we're going to talk about tonight. The sin that's okay as long as you love Jesus. We do it all day long. We don't serve anybody, and we write it off as though it's something we don't have to do just because we don't want to do it. Well, how do we put this into practice? How do we understand that we have a job to do? Well, James puts it like this. He says, if you know the right thing to do and you don't do it, that for you is a sin. So how can we veer away from this sin of not serving others and start putting it into practice? Number one, you can volunteer in your community. And I'm going to get real practical on some of these, because this may not be a spiritual concept, but this is good material that we should follow. Volunteering in your community. Is there a need in your community that no one wants to tackle, but you have the skill set to be perfect for the job? This is a great opportunity for you to use a God-given skill and also bring honor and glory to Him by stepping up and filling the need in the community. Number two, you can focus on the needs of those around you. Maybe you're too busy grinding it out at work for you to be able to notice all of the things that people need around you, your family, your friends. Maybe you need to take a moment and take inventory of the people closest to you and what their needs are and how you can help them. This doesn't mean giving money to them. This doesn't even mean doing tasks for them per se. It could mean that there's someone that you know that needs some really good advice right now, and being mindful of that and giving them the advice that they need, not the advice that you're just wanting to give. So many times we love to give advice to people, and it's unsolicited, it's unwanted, and it's untimely. But if you see someone that's in need of some good advice, take that moment to do that, because that is serving others. Number 3, maybe you need to plan a break in your schedule. Now, we're talking about Jesus serving others. What does that have to do with planning a break in your schedule? It's there in the story. It's kind of hidden. Jesus has been busy, going here, going there, going to the temple, teaching, calling out the Pharisees and the Sadducees. But what's happening in this story? He was especially busy leading up to his time on the cross, but here he is having dinner with 12 of his closest friends. That's all. Now, mind you, Jesus doesn't ever just do anything. He's always having some kind of spiritual purpose to it. We just don't always see it when we glance at it at first. But in this one, he was planning a break in his schedule. It was a teachable moment, but it was a planned break to spend time with the people that he cared for most in this life. Here he is. He planned out a break. If we want to serve others, we have to make sure that we can carve time out of our schedule and make time for them. Last one here that we're going to talk about tonight. Perform a random act of kindness. Now, this is where it comes in, you doing work for somebody. This could be, especially you folks up there in the north with all the snow and everything, maybe you can shovel your neighbor's driveway and sidewalk. Maybe there's an elderly woman or a widower that lives on your street. Maybe you can take them a meal or two. Whatever it is that allows you to do some kind of random act of goodwill. It can be something simple, it can be something easy, or you can make it as complicated as you want it to be. But doing something for somebody else is so integral to everything that Jesus taught us. Maybe you're watching the program tonight and you've never accepted Jesus into your heart. Your next step is to make that decision and choose to invite Jesus into your heart and make him Lord of your life. And I would love to explain that more to you. Maybe you're watching the program, you've been saved for a while, and the one thing you struggle with is helping others. That's your next step. Now, whatever your next step is, I want you to go online to www.billyjbailey.com/prayer. Let me know what it is that we're working on, how I can pray with you, not for you, and how I can partner with you, lead you closer to Jesus one step at a time. If you don't have a Bible, I'd love to get a Bible in your hands. If you don't have a church, I'd love to invite you to join me online from my church. Just send me a message. I'm happy to get that information over to you guys. But I don't want to go away too quick here tonight. That's the conclusion of Sins That Are Okay as Long As You Love Jesus. But we have a brand new series starting up just next week. It's called Twisted Scripture. Now, I know what you're thinking. We go from one topic that seems controversial to yet another. You got it. That's what we love to do on the program. Get your mind thinking before we even get started. We're going to be walking through Matthew chapter 5. We're not leaving Matthew chapter 5. We may pull some other scripture in to help us with some of the passages that we're on. But we are literally walking through Matthew chapter 5. 4 sermons straight out of that chapter about twisted scripture. Words that have been twisted to mean something that they don't, and we're going to talk about it starting next week. So I'm super excited about that, and I hope to see you guys next week. God bless you. Have a great week.